welcome to the show.
Thanks for
Uh,
having me.
but you were there at the mall when all of this began. I know at one point was watching on CNN and C-SPAN, and the crowd was waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and they seemed pretty calm at that point until when?
Pretty much until Trump arrived. It was like, Trump spoke and then Eric spoke, and then it was just kind of like the crowd transitioned. I think Trump and Eric Trump initiated the Capitol. Them actually going that way. I
When you
remember
say
the night.
Eric, you're talking about Eric Trump?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So when they were speaking, the crowd trying to kind of transitioned, like, to go to the Capitol. So they all kind of started, leaving and heading to the Capitol. I remember the night before, we actually videotaped one of the Magma supporters actually saying that tomorrow we're going to the Capitol. I was like, that's crazy. You're gonna get arrested. Like, I was literally thinking in my mind, like, these crazy people not going to no Capitol. They're gonna literally get arrested. And and they started heading that way. So I just started following them, like, okay, this is going to go nuts. It's going to go crazy. Because I remember when I was going to the Capitol, I couldn't even like get past the first barrier of the security perimeter. So I know, like, I was like, man, this is going to end up bad. So I just started following along, and they literally just overtook the security borders. Like the first one, you can hear them yelling, "USA, USA, we pay your taxes, we pay your bills," and then they just like overtook, the Capitol Police, and like thousands of them just
Let me,
ambushed the. Yes, they was.
yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah. I just wanted to ask too, because and I want to bring in our other reporters in part of this conversation, Anthony. But let me ask you. I mean, you're a journalist, so I understand why you were out there, and I understand why everybody was out there. But what was the feeling like? I mean, what did you're a young black man, hopefully with your press credentials. At any point, did you feel personally endangered?
Okay, so I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. The only time I actually felt like in danger was when I got inside the Capitol. Like, that was the first time I thought that I needed a bulletproof vest. I was like, I'm going to get shot in here. I'm like one of the only black people in here. They going to shoot me first. So that was like the only time, and I actually tweeted that. I said, that's the only time I've been covering, the protests since like the summer. So, I've been in some deadly situations with flash bombs and, rubber bullets and just explosions. So, I that's kind of like how my drive. Like, I remember getting a few calls from people that's like, "Hey, are you okay?" I'm like, this is like exhilarating. This is crazy. It's like I'm in the middle of the action. So, like I said, the only time that I actually felt nervous was actually when they kind of broke inside, and I was like, wow, this is really happening. Like right now, I'm going to
Ever
literally
ask,
get.
did you
Huh?
ever ask yourself, in the intensity of any of these moments, what people are talking about now? You said that you participated or you've covered other events where you've experienced more aggressive police tactics. Did you
Yes.
ever at any point think what people are asking, if this had been Black Lives Matter, would this have been different?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, you can literally see how resistant when they got past the first security border and beginning of the Capitol. It seemed like, they just literally just overtook the Capitol Police. I mean, there was really no resistance from it. I mean, like, I honestly never really thought that it would be that easy to just kind of like get ahead of the actual security barriers. And even them being outnumbered, I assumed that they was going to kind of just get really forceful and really just start taking that stronger initiative to really get these folks back. Like, I literally thought I was going to get shot. I literally thought, like, the
Okay.
craziest part is when that they was getting through the window. So I was on the other side by the door. So people was coming in from every different way. So when they got past that second security border, it was people coming in from different sides. You saw it was like thousands of people just bum rushing the Capitol from different angles. So
Wow.
I
Okay.
literally heard the gunshot come from the window.
Mhm.
And my initial thought was, wow, I'm about to get shot. Like it's about to go down. Like
Yeah.
it's like SWAT about to come. And I was
Wow.
just like so nervous. I was like, oh my God, I need a vest. I need a bulletproof vest. I got my camera and my phone, and I had my camera and my phone in my hand, and both at the same time was recording, trying to, hear what was going on. And it was just at that moment, I'm sitting there thinking like, okay, I'm crazy. Like this is stupid, Anthony. Like you're literally the only black person right now. Like you need to calm down and like this like. But the other Anthony, the other like devil was talking in my mind like,
The
go
devil.
ahead in there, man. You need to get that
Let's get
picture.
it done. Let's
Like
get
get
it
that
done.
picture. Like get that picture, man. Like you trying to win a Pulitzer. Like you need to like what I'm saying, like you about to win something. Like so it was just like overwhelming.
Yeah, on the other side, I mean, we had talked to. I'm glad to bring Stacey Brown, James Wright, and Sam Collins onto the phone because they, under the direction of our editor Kevin McNair and Ron Taylor, I mean, the forces went out to make sure that we had this covered in as many ways as we could. But Stacey, at what point did you realize that this was worth covering, but was getting out of hand?
Well, it was worth covering from the beginning when you saw them, as Anthony described, headed toward the Capitol. Now you knew it couldn't be good because you knew what was going on in the Capitol. The counting of the Electoral College votes, the formal count, certification actually, and so you knew it couldn't be good. But as Anthony described, I love his vivid description of it. Even more, I love his videos. CNN, NBC, nobody has videos like Anthony Tillman. So, but you knew that this was different, and Anthony kind of touched on it. What's shocking, Denise, was how they basically was like, come on in. They opened the gates, and you mentioned the whole Black Lives Matter thing, and there are reasons. There's a lot of reasons why they didn't treat this like Black Lives Matter. Number one, of course, because they didn't have black skin. But the other thing was, I think Denise, you pointed this out several times now, that many of these Trump supporters, these protesters, these rioters, domestic terrorists, they're armed. They're dangerous people. They are military people. They are police people. We saw a congressman from Virginia join this. So there's like this camaraderie. And so we talk about the blue wall. Well, many of them are part of the blue wall. So it is a difference. And that's probably why I should say, you didn't see the response that you would see, as Anthony described, for Black Lives Matter. So, but we knew right away, we are all professional journalists. We knew that this was something tantamount to, as much as you hate to hear it and you hate to say it, but it's tantamount to 9/11. This was a terrorist attack, only it was domestic terrorists. So we knew that we had to do something. The Washington Informer, of course, doesn't necessarily cover crime, but this was in the Washington Informer's backyard, so you couldn't ignore it, and it affected everybody. We saw the responses from around the world. World leaders were appalled.
Exactly. It was good. We even had one of our reporters who covers international news, Oswald Brown, to bring some of those stories to light as well. James, you and Sam both talked about the local response, the mayor, how she addressed this, our local police chief. I'm getting some feedback from somebody, James. But anyway, let's. I'm gonna start with you, James. Just, how did the city handle this? How do you think the mayor handled this, and our police chief?
Well, let me just say that the mayor counseled people to stay home. Near the Capitol go out. She established a curfew on Wednesday night starting at 6 p.m. to Thursday 6 a.m. And of course, she has extended this public emergency as a result of this situation of the insurrection, really until the end of the month. I will say also, Chief Conte yesterday at the mayor's press conference complimented his own forces in terms of trying to help the Capitol Police. Let me make a real quick point on that. The Capitol Hill Police covers the Capitol grounds. Jurisdiction over the Capitol grounds. MPD does not. In order for them to come Hill grounds, they have to be invited, which they were. And some people think that MPD can just walk on the Capitol, and that's just not the case. That's not the case at all.
Interesting. Sam, how about you? I mean, you also got involved in the story, you know, and one day we'll kind of do a piece on police departments, because we've gotten about, you know, we're talking about defund police and Black Lives Matter and all that. And this is one of those situations where you realize the value depending on what side you're on. But what's your take on this?
I'm very glad that you brought up that point, because when it comes to the issue of defunding police and the effectiveness of the police department, people do have varying views on that, especially as it relates to how soon the authorities could have responded and planned ahead for this catastrophe. Black Lives Matter DC, as well as other grassroots organizations, released a list of recommendations as to how they could have prevented this insurrection. And they noted that this was the third time since the election that the Proud Boys and other Trump supporters entered DC. So what happened earlier this week was not the first time that, you know, it was an escalation, but, you know, it could be argued that we sort of saw this coming, if not through their previous actions, then through the planning that they did online, as well as whatever Trump did to incite that violence. So, you know, while Muriel Bowser and the police, they were responsive and they heeded to the call of the Capitol Police, there was still some criticism. Beyond that, there are some questions about DC statehood and the extent to which, you know, the DC police could have protected federal land. There's still some confusion among people who are critical of the police about the jurisdiction and the extent to which they could have been involved in protecting on the Capitol grounds. So this situation just raises a whole lot of questions about who has power, who has autonomy in protecting the land, and once again, the extent to which DC police could have helped quell the insurrection. But as of today, we have more than 50 arrests and an investigation is underway. So we do see a lot of collaboration between MPD, the Capitol Police, and to some extent, the National Guard and the FBI.
Which is another point, because the mayor couldn't even call the FBI, call the National Guard because of her status. And people, I have to personally say, you know, my brother who lives in Kansas called me that day and said, now I understand why DC needs statehood. But, you know, these people are planning to come back. We've got an inauguration scheduled on January 20th. Did the mayor, James, or Stacey, or any of you all, I know Anthony's going to have his camera, so I know he'll be ready. But is the city ready? And I just want to add in another note, because I don't know how many of you all may know a reporter who was very active in the community, Valencia Muhammad, a few back in the day, but she sent a letter out to everybody saying that these folks actually dispersed into neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. They saw them in neighborhoods. And I haven't heard anybody speak to that.
Yeah. And, you know, Denise, in addition to that, not many have spoken to that at all. But in addition to that, we talk about all this, we forget something extremely scary. They found bombs at the RNC headquarters and at the DNC headquarters. And supposedly, and this part hasn't been confirmed, but at the Capitol, there was a bomb at the Capitol. So are they going to be ready for the inauguration? The question really is, Denise, yeah, they can be ready. And I know Mayor Bowser, I called her Governor Bowser, but I know that she's going to be ready. But the question really is, do they want to be ready? Because there is, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but there's this growing sense, even in Congress, you talk to some, and I've spoken to some of the Congress people, that not only were police complicit, but they believe that this was conspired. And so as the federal prosecutor is looking into charges, including charges, he's looking at 3 charges into President Trump. Now, we don't really have time to really break them all down, but there are 3 charges that he's looking at and considering when it comes to President Trump. But conspiracy is a major charge regardless of the crime. Conspiracy, a federal conspiracy, can get you 20 years in federal prison. Kevin McNear, our editor at the Washington Informer, says that the Informer will be dropping a piece today on the differences, responsibilities, and different jurisdictions of Capitol Police, MPD, and the other forces. So people can look for that at the WashingtonInformer.com. But it's a lot going on. And real quick, Denise, I want to say this. I mentioned 9/11 earlier, and there's a parallel for me in the Washington Informer. 9/11, I was working for a newspaper in New York, and I was called to work early that morning to cover a case of a man who the FBI was arresting that morning at a school for hijacking a plane 20 years earlier. Well, by the time I got back to the office, I'm thinking that's going to be the big story. By the time I got to the office, the first plane had hit. Well, 8 years ago this week, you hired me to write for the Washington Informer, and I was at the Capitol with the Deltas. So here we are 8 years later at the Capitol for chaos and rioting.
So there's so much more I want to talk to you all about, but we've got 2 other guests that are about to come on, and we're going to talk about what I described in my editorial this week was Trump's super spreader, a spreader of hate, a spreader of violence, and a spreader of a virus, coronavirus. Thousands and thousands of unmasked people threatening Washingtonians as they marched from the mall to the Capitol. So we're going to switch now and talk about the virus. If you all can stay with us after Dr. Frederick in about 20 minutes, I'd like to come back and have more of this conversation with you if you're available, and I'd appreciate it if you just hang on. Okie doke. Thank you.